re-coordinate myself here. So first, I wanted to thank Dean Brett Steele and graduate director and advisor, graduate director and professor Alvin Huang for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am, again, honored and humbled to be here. First thing, I am not an architect, so this will not be an architecture lecture. I have no idea how to give an architecture lecture, so this hopefully will feel completely different from many of the other guests that you've had and from John himself as well. But I have sought out architects and their ways of working over the years for inspiration throughout my career because, for me, architects have been the ones who have pioneered technology in a way to shape the world and culture unlike anyone else has before. And that's an amazing, amazing strength and approach and also skill set. As architects, oh, forgot to click. Oh, that's right. I got to play a video first. So before I start talking, hold that thought. I'm going to play this quick video.
Innovation is in Nike's DNA. Phil Knight and legendary track coach Bill Bowerman saw a way to help athletes push their limits through disruptive products.
3/4 of a mile, Steve Prefontaine with about 2 yards on Jerry Lindgren.
They asked, what if? Poured rubber into waffle iron and never looked back. Their rebel spirit and passion to serve athletes with innovation and inspiration set Nike on a course that would forever change sport and culture. The Waffle Racer, Nike Air, the Windrunner, AJ1, Flyknit, Super Shoes. For 50 years, we've reimagined and redrawn the boundaries of what's possible. To continuously innovate, we must embrace that rebel spirit and seek out new, disruptive ways of creating. We collaborate and play, seek and dream, and ultimately push our craft through passion and rigor, forging ahead into the unknown with optimism and the resolve to create what's next. We're now embarking on a new era where imagination is unbound. What if is a question not answered by if, but when. Today, more than ever before, technology is easily accessible and the pace of change is exponential. With a foundation in data science and AI, we can augment our creativity with possibilities our human minds can't compute. Powered by the Nike Sport Research Lab and computational capabilities, we bridge athlete insights and advanced design to transform sport, fusing art with science, creativity with computation, and craft with precision-tuned performance. Our commitment to serve and inspire athletes will never change, but imagine what will when our imagination is unbound.
All right, now I'm ready to talk. So, as architects, you're trained in art and science, form and function, nature and technology. And that dichotomy and juxtaposition is powerful because you can leverage that to create beauty, function, and ultimately provocation to push humanity forward. That's important. At Nike, I've been fortunate to have worked and been mentored by two amazing design legends. So John Hoke, our former Chief Design Innovation Officer who was here last week, and Tinker Hatfield, who has created and designed most of our iconic product. They are both architects. I also have personally hired two graduates from the School of Architecture. Amongst all of them, I am always amazed by their imagination and their approach to the work. As architects, you can imagine and bring to life solutions nobody else in this world can. And that's an amazing skill set that I hope you all cherish and carry forward. But there's also something I'm going to talk about today. It's about the rebel spirit. So you can tap into your imagination and deliver work, but if you can also tap into a rebel spirit, you can also join those legends in this industry who came before you. Those who approached their projects, poked at it, asked the question, what if, and then pushed ahead by taking risks and not looking back. In this room, one of you, some of you, or all of you are going to be the next generation of rebels. So I'm Roger Chen, and as Aaron Alvin has said, I'm the Vice President at Nike Innovation of the Advanced Digital Creation Studio. And for myself, what I do is I lead a team of advanced product creation experts. We're product designers, product engineers with advanced digital skill sets and computational skill sets. We're hackers, we're dreamers with immense curiosity. Our purpose is really to unleash creativity and performance innovation through the power of computation to create iconic, disruptive product. We've been part of Nike's most daring innovations over the years, and we've also been able to bring into the world products and experiences and ways of working that nobody could imagine. So today, I'm going to talk about three things. And it's the power of imagination, the rebel spirit, and the question, what if? So the first story I'm going to talk about is just a little bit about myself because it ties into Nike, why I'm at Nike, and also how I look at the future of Nike and where the industry is going. So Steve Jobs said this at his Stanford commencement speech. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them when looking back. It's very true. And the difficulty, though, with what he talked about in his commencement speech is that when you're in the moment, what do you do next? How do you know what choice to make? Whether you've been laid off, if you're doing poorly in school, if you're looking for a job market's hard, what's next? So, like Steve Jobs, I actually went to Reed College. I was a very hard worker, but I was also very, very curious. So I dropped into a number of classes that I wasn't registered for, and I was excited, and I wanted to master each and every one of them. So needless to say, I didn't do well in my registered classes. And unlike Steve Jobs, I didn't drop out. I actually got put on academic probation. So with the help of my parents and my advisor, I always have to call out his name because I appreciate him, Professor Jeffrey Parker, they advocated and fought for me to stay in school and supported me throughout. So during this period of time, it's really hard to figure out what was next for me. Imagination drove me. I lived my life by my heart, my curiosity. Those are the sparks of imagination. And you have to hold on to that because you don't know what's next there. So I took classes in art, math, architecture. I am not an architect, I just sat in classes. I took classics, literature, philosophy, everything. I know 2 dead languages, Latin, ancient Greek. I can read the Odyssey in its original text. So in my junior year, I asked myself, what am I going to do with all this stuff in my head? And then I asked myself a second question. What if I got a business education to create a strong foundation for whatever I'm going to do with all this knowledge in my head? So I switched to economics, and I actually switched to economics, and I actually graduated with academic honors at Reed. So this is the mid-90s, and the internet was becoming mainstream. For any of those who were alive in the 90s, the internet was becoming mainstream, just like AI is right now. And the fear, the debates that's going on for AI right now, that you're all well aware of, you're probably talking about in your classrooms, that fear and debate is deja vu. It was the exact same conversation happening in the 90s about the internet. Everything we take for granted right now about the internet, that was the same conversation back then. People were afraid of it. In fact, and that's where I need my notes, the Bill Gates in 1994, there's the quote. So the Bill Gates said, I see little commercial potential for the internet for the next 10 years. A famous professor and astronomer, Clifford Stoll, said, "No online database will replace your daily newspaper, and no computer network will change the way the government works." Hardware and software will all top out in the mid-90s, and thus, the internet will never get any more user-friendly or have any more potential. So this probably sounds familiar because it's the same conversation we're having around AI. So at this point, I had only used a word processor. I didn't know anything about computers, but I didn't want to run away from what the future could hold. So I embraced it and I leaned into it. I went to Oregon State University to get a master's in computer science. So the reality, again, going back to Steve's quote, is that you can't connect the dots looking forward. So at this point, the reality is that in the moment, when you're facing these choices, imagination is your only friend. And that imagination is what you have to cultivate and trust in. Because imagination is the guidepost at the crossroads between hope and fear. And I believe that's a sentiment many of us feel throughout our lives and careers. So after college, I bounced between jobs. I did software engineering, I did digital design. I was laid off twice. And I quit 2 jobs. So you can imagine what my parents felt like after paying for my college tuition. But these were formative years because this is when I built out my skill set. And more importantly, this is when I strengthened my imagination to really help me figure out how to craft a career of my own choosing. I was able to begin taking risks, and ultimately I bet on myself. And throughout my career, this is what I have seen, is that everyone looks at these disappointments as failures. There's no failure in my mind. Sarah knows this from lots of conversations. You learn from it, and the most important part is use your imagination to craft your future. So I joined Nike 22 years ago. I was a software architect for Nike.com. So this is a top engineering position. I did a great job doing that job, but after a couple of years, I want to go back to design. So I started over as a UX UI designer for Nike.com. And I was able to work on Commerce, Nike Plus, which is now Nike Running Club, and then Nike ID, which is now Nike by You. Soon I became the creative director for Nike.com, and I was leading the global experience and creative design teams. We showed the world that you could customize designs online. We worked in retail to show customization experiences. Some of you may have seen these in the House of Innovation, bless you, stores. We also showed people how you can track runs and get coached on both an iPod, for those who know what that is, as well as an iPhone. And ultimately, we created the world's largest online running community and created online running events. Throughout these years, we won numerous awards, and even recently, the prestigious Webby Awards named Nike one of the 30 most iconic brands of the internet in internet history. I am very proud and humbled to have been part of that journey. And in 2012, I decided to switch. So even though I was a creative director at Nike.com, I wanted to become a product designer. Now, you can't just go from that field to a whole different field because I knew nothing about apparel or footwear design. But I decided to take a few steps back in my career and start over and build it up again. So over the last 10 years, I've been able to work with John Hoke and many other amazing design leaders to really figure out what is the future of design and ultimately the future of engineering, and take us, along with our industry, on this journey. So we started using computational design on some of our most amazing products. So the Vaporfly is what really changed the super shoe industry. It was the first super shoe that was introduced in the marketplace, and now every competitor has one. We also were able to start using computational design and hack into different machines, so such as 3D printing. And through this journey, what we did was we didn't want to use computational design like other people, because John, being an architect, and me being fascinated with architecture, 10 plus years ago, we sat down and said, we wanted to figure out how we brought this craft from architecture into our industry. But the most important part is we didn't want to follow the path of architects. We had to make it ours. And to do that, we had to deconstruct it and make it in a way that would work at Nike. So this is a picture of the Rebento. It's the World Cup bag that we created. It's computationally designed, 3D printed. It's the world's first one. And we did this with our elite athletes, Cristiano Ronaldo and many others. And throughout the years, we've been able to show how this advanced technology can create the most iconic product. Nike React Element 87 was a computationally designed shoe that won Sneaker of the Year from multiple publications. We also introduced the Vaporfly Elite Flyprint, which is the world's first 3D printed performance textile. We show that 3D printing can be actually used as a textile innovation, and we can tune it specifically to athletes. We have used computational design, computational engineering on some of the most advanced products the world's ever seen. So in the last 3 Olympics, all the uniforms have been computationally designed. Sarah has actually been part of that journey, so much appreciation to her. We've introduced performance at a highest level using 3D printing, computational design for the Mercurial football boot, WNBA, NBA uniforms. We also use it for all the World Cup uniforms, so the upcoming World Cup here in LA and across the US. Those all have been computationally designed. And the previous Olympics were the Paris Olympics as well. So we have taken something that was inspired from architecture, but we made it our own, just using our imagination and also a bit of that rebel spirit where we're not going to do what others did. We've seen how it's been used in architecture, but we're going to make it our own. Ask the question is, what if we actually tried it here and push it forward in a way that can bring change and disrupt our industry? So the reality, though, when I talk about my career and what I've gone through and why it actually fits into Nike, is that in the moment, you really don't know what's next. And that's a hard barrier wall to face. Imagination really is your friend at that moment. And in that time, you have to use your imagination to imagine something different, something better, and something disruptive. So being here and just thinking back to my old college days, one piece of advice I have is don't just get a job and do a job. Don't just go to school. Master your craft so you can break it. Master your discipline so you can change it. Cultivate your imagination. Ask the hard questions. Ultimately ask yourself, what if? Take a chance and don't look back. So enough about me. Now I'm going to talk about Nike, what it's like, where we started, and where we're at now. So innovation is the DNA of Nike. Our founders, Phil Knight and Bill Bowerman, started the company when they saw an opportunity to help athletes push and pursue their potential. But more importantly, they want to pursue this potential through innovative, disruptive product. They showed us and taught us how you can master your craft and then break it. They used science and technology, unlike anybody else had at the time, to really create disruptive products that helped our athletes do things nobody else could do. This is important because at the time in 1972, Nike just started. Adidas was #1 by far. They were already probably $1 billion company at the time. So you're talking about a startup with $0. They had this will and this imagination to take us somewhere on this magical journey. So most people don't know Bill Bowerman, but I love Bill. Bill was, I'll go back. So Bill was a world renowned, he's passed away now, but Bill was a world-renowned track coach at the University of Oregon. He was also the US Olympic track coach. He took meticulous notes on every single athlete he coached and trained. He studied their biomechanics, physiology. And then he would make custom shoes and clothes for them to perform and race in. So for those of you who have played sports or played music or done anything, how many of your coaches and teachers have ever gone to that extent for you? I've been none. So Bill was amazing. The next amazing part is really what kicked us off. One day he was sitting there in his kitchen. He looked at his wife's waffle iron and he asked himself, what if he took that waffle iron, went to his work shed, and poured rubber into it? His wife wasn't happy. But in that moment, Bill created the world's first running traction shoe. He saw something there nobody else had seen, and that's when he willed it to life. So that tradition of invention didn't just stop there. A great example is the Pegasus. Well, from there, though, we went on to 50 years of amazing work. And we took that spirit and have created amazing products that have influenced and set Nike on a path that really helped change sport and culture. But one product I want to talk about is the Pegasus shoe. Some of you may be familiar with it. This is the shoe I've always run in. In 1982, the Air Pegasus was introduced. At that point, we had discovered it with Frank Rudy, the airbag. We believed it could change performance products forever. We believed that this airbag could be developed in a way using science and technology to really transform how we approach running. So in this case with the Pegasus, what we did was we took this airbag, we made it lighter than foam, we made it more responsive than foam, and more longer lasting. Then we had to figure out how to make it fit into the system of a running shoe. From its birth in 1982, Air Pegasus now has gone on to become the world's biggest selling running shoe ever, by far. But 40 plus years later, we're still innovating it. Innovation doesn't stop. There is no finish line for it. A few weeks ago, we announced the Pegasus 42. In this shoe, we've now taken that original idea of the heel airbag, and now this is for the first time in a Pegasus shoe, we have a full-length Air Zoom bag. It's a curved bag that's computationally engineered and sculpted using the latest information, data from sports science and engineering to really tune this. I like showing this because it's a testament to our spirit. We're never going to rest on our laurels. We're always going to be innovating, creating, inventing. We could have easily stopped 40 years ago on innovating the Air Pegasus shoe, but we knew we can keep going and making it better. The next example I want to talk about is breaking 4. So some of you may know about this. Last year we had this event with Faith Kipgun. She's probably one of the world's greatest runners. In July 2023, she had broken the women's mile world record time at a 4:07:64. Now, most people would be happy there, but the reality is in 2023, and by that time, she had broken the world record 3 times already, which is an amazing feat. And after that, she decided there's a chance she could be the first woman to ever break the 4-minute mile mark. She and her team reached out, we talked, and what we did was we spent the next year thinking and designing head to toe, taking everything into consideration from sports science. What would it take to help her break the 4-minute mark? Again, it's not about the goal itself. It's about the journey. Just the fact that she imagined it, that spirit, that rebellious spirit, that I'm going to be the first to do that. It doesn't matter if she makes it or not. She wasn't afraid what people thought, but she took on that challenge, and we were on that ride with her. So we designed a full bodysuit. We invented a new material that's a Nike proprietary material that's very sleek. Air just comes off of it. Second thing is we use computational design and engineering to create 3D printed aero nodes. We use computational fluid dynamics, aerodynamics research and science to come up with exact placement using her body scan, her motion capture, all the data to precisely tune the performance of the suit. And a testament to how much she loved it is that she felt it was her. It felt like it was a skin, that is her own skin. The next thing we did was we introduced to the world the first 3D printed sports bra. For many of the women here who know, sports bras aren't great. They're a sweat tax. When you're working out, they absorb and hold all the sweat and water and moisture. They weigh you down. You can't perform. This bra wicks everything away. It's the first time anybody's introduced this into an industry. So Faith wore this and helped her perform at a peak level she's never performed before. The third part of what we did was we took her favorite spike, the Victory 2, and we deconstructed it and rebuilt it from the ground up. The final result was this amazing track spike with high energy response, but the shoe only weighed 86 grams. To put that into perspective, that's the weight of a deck of cards. So head to toe, we obsessed and listened to her and helped her accomplish. She didn't break the 4-minute mark, but what's more amazing is that she took on the challenge to break it. And secondly, she did actually break her own mile record again. So I've talked a lot about products, but at the end of the day at Nike, it's not just about products. It's about the way we work. And we're always thinking about how we stay on the offense. How do we keep reinventing the way we work? And this is important, not just at Nike, but I think for each of you as you pursue your own careers and interests. That it's always about evolving immediately, always being on offense. And for us, we're going to be grounded in our purpose, which is sports, making athletes better, creating epic product for them. And so we're grounded in sports science, but we're going to reimagine how materials, new methods to make, ultimately design and engineering work. And that has been my role for the last decade, is really looking and reimagining with my team, how do we design differently? How do we engineer products differently? But what makes Nike amazing is that we have a diverse group of experts. So we have sports scientists, we have material scientists, we have architects, we have designers, we have business people, strategists. The magic comes when we all come together to collaborate and play. No one person has one idea that goes all the way through. It takes an army of people, a team of people working together to bring these things to life. And I think that's the magic, is that when you can celebrate a win at the end of the day, it's with a team of people. You're not alone. The other part of it is when we started thinking about computational design, we had to think about how we bring this to life within the constructs of Nike. Again, both John and I were inspired from architecture, him more so because he came from architecture. For me, I just pretended to know architecture. So when we deconstructed it, reaching out to several architects, I talked to them and learned about their practices. One of the most important things is about the inputs and outputs. For us, we had to construct what our inputs are because it's different from architecture. We have our Nike Sports Research Lab, an amazing facility where we can capture athletes performing at the highest level. We have a full basketball court, soccer pitch, track. We have over 400 motion capture sensors capturing every single microscopic movement. We have force plates. My own team, we have body scanning motion capture to capture additional information for fit and drape and all the other information we need to design products. We have material science who provide all the material chemical properties and other things that I don't know too much about. We bring all this data into our computational process, and this is similar to what you do in your studies for those who are practicing in this field, is that we take computational design, computational engineering, FEA, and then we create a closed loop cycle where we can bring this stuff to life. But ultimately, if it's sitting on your computer and you're looking at this 3D product, what are you going to do with it? You also have to have outputs. So we need to connect it into manufacturing. And so this is an image from our Advanced Product Creation Center. So we have a 125,000 square foot facility with the most amazing equipment. So we have robotics, we have 3D printing, we have traditional machinery. We now have a full ecosystem where we can bring computational capabilities to life. We can take athlete insights in, design and engineer, and then output amazing prototypes along with final goods. So in the course of that, we've been able to introduce new products the world hasn't ever imagined before. These are 4 recent innovations that the team has worked on. On the left-hand side is a product called Amplify. This is a shoe to help people walk. So whether you're older or if you have other disabilities, we know we can't just create regular shoes for everybody. So the Amplify is an amazing product that's going to help people provide more access to walking and running. The second product there is the Air Milano jacket we showed at the Winter Olympics. It's taking our Nike Air technology and putting it into apparel so that we can now actually control and adapt the thermal regulation in the body so you can warm and cool yourself using this new technology. Aerofit is an engineered knit. That's probably the most thermal regulated textile we've ever created there. It's computationally designed. And the fourth one there is what we call the Mind Shoe. It's a shoe that helps activate the acupuncture points that activate your mind and prepare you for sport and recovery. A lot of these takes the whole ecosystem of Nike innovation, the sports scientists, the material scientists, computational designers, computational engineers, footwear designers, apparel designers. And that's really the magic that comes to life here in Nike Innovation. Again, how we do that is really being to come together as a diverse group of experts, collaborating, again, collaborate and play, seek and dream, and really push each other to create ultimate craft. So in the computational design practice, because that's the team that I lead, we've been able to really think about how we want to take what we learned from architecture and apply it in our space more specifically. So in footwear, what we often do is that we think about these inputs, again, from sports science, but we want to think about it through the lens of our athletes. Like we worked with LeBron on his shoe, we worked on with Shelly and Fraser Price on their track spike. A lot of this comes out because you're listening to the athlete, you're connecting to them, you're working with them. It's not about our own idea. You can create a product that you love, but if our athletes, our consumers don't love it at the end of the day, then who really cares? It's about creating that human emotional connection at the end of the day that people cherish and ultimately covet. So again, here's some examples from the apparel side. We've worked on, again, the NBA, WNBA, many of the global football uniforms, along with all the Olympic uniforms from the last few years. We've done products from lifestyle to running, football, basketball. All of this has grown because we showed the power of computation. And this goes back to showing that from what Bill and Phil showed us from the early days, when Bill first took that waffle iron and wasn't scared of technology and adapting science and technology to help the consumer and help the athlete, we're still doing the same. We're not running away, we're leaning in. I think that's the power of being at Nike. But one thing I want to talk about is that, about technology, is that we don't want to use technology just for the sake of it. Too many people in the industry talk about the technology, and that's what they dwell on. It's important to lean into the technology and not let it shape you, because you need to have a point of view on how best to use it. So this is an example of Flyprint, which we debuted about 7 or 8 years ago. What we did was we worked with Eliud Kipchoge. He's probably the greatest marathoner of all time. And working with him, he just had finished the Berlin Marathon, and he talked about basically it started pouring rain, and a traditional mesh upper, it carried the water and weight. He wanted something that was more breathable, but also more water resistant. So we didn't want to just use 3D printing for the sake of it. What we did was we listened to him, we heard a problem, and then we went to use computational design, 3D printing to solve this problem. And this is where the magic comes in, is that by working with Eliud Kipchoge closely, he's able to start telling us what he wanted. And what you saw there, I can replay it while I talk, is that we're using this technology now to control precisely the placement of every single fiber and textile in that upper. This is something that no one has ever been able to do before, because when you do a traditional shoe, it's knitted or the mesh is a roll good, it covers their whole foot. We're now putting every single line intentionally. When we worked with him, he would draw in his notebook and draw on the shoe itself exactly where he wanted each thread. And we work with sports scientists then to print exactly every single curve, every single piece of textile. This opens up a whole new world and domain for us to invent. I'm going to play a video from him.
When you run for a long time with this kind of shoe, the feeling is like you are flying. You feel like flying when you are running. I can go through the workout with ease. First reason is that it breathes well, so my foot is really capable to breathe when I'm training in hard sessions like what I was doing today. And secondly, my muscles are really recovering very well because I don't have any impact from the ground. And above all, with the new technique of the upper, it makes the shoe lighter than the rest.
So Elliot loved the shoe. He ran several races in them, but it also inspired the next generation of innovation for Nike. We created something called Atom Knit, which is even more thinner and more breathable engineered knit than this. But that's the intention of the team, and also for Nike, is that we're never settled. Innovation is really in our DNA, and what that means is that there is no finish line. You're never done. We're going to keep changing, keep evolving, keep pushing it. And science and technology is always going to be at the root of that, because if you're not leaning into it, then you're going to be shaped by it. So the next topic I want to talk about is that, I cover kind of the past and present of Nike, is a little bit about what's next. So for us, if I'm telling you that innovation is the DNA of Nike and we're always changing, evolving, well, obviously the question is what's next there. And you can't, and I've said this a couple times, you can't connect the dots looking forward. So you have to rely on your imagination. And the reality is right now, technology is changing at an ever fast pace, is that the future is already here. We're already in this next era. For us, we call this next era Unbound imagination. The reality is that technology is more accessible than ever before. The pace of change is exponential. And also with the power of data, or with data at our fingertips and the power of AI, creativity is going to be unleashed at unprecedented speeds. So our approach to Gen AI, our approach to new forms of technology coming is to lean in. Just like I did back in school, just like Nike has done over the years, is we're going to lean in and embrace it. Because at the end of the day, if you don't lean in, if you don't have a point of view, you can't shape technology. Technology is going to shape you. And that's the most important thing, I believe, in your field, in our field. Because in architecture and in product design, we have a common ground, and that's humanity. We're all here to serve humanity. We're creating products, experiences for humans. And you can't let technology change who you are or change what you do. We have to keep the human approach instilled at every single step of the way. So for us, just like in computational design, what we want to do is we want to deconstruct the technology, figure out what it means to us, ground ourselves in our purpose, and use that as a way to move things forward. If you don't have some sort of methodology, that's when you lose track of who you are and your ambitions, and that's where technology will take hold of you and run with it. You've all seen the Gen AI slop and everything else out there. So for us, it's deconstruction. So for us, the technology benefits here is that with Gen AI, data, computation, you can do things your human mind can't do, and that's amazing. You're never going to store all this data information in your head. You're never going to compute all these things that computers can do for you. You want to take advantage of it. It can automate, accelerate a lot of these other things. Think about those benefits, deconstruct it. Then next, instill at every step of the process the human emotional connection. That's the important part. That separates us from the technology. And for us, when you think about the architectural projects you have, and for us from product design, is that if you don't have a whole human emotional connection to the product, it's just an object. it's going to atrophy. No one will care. If you have a human emotional connection to it, that's when something becomes cherished and coveted. And that's ultimately what you want as an architect and as a designer. So a prime example of this is the AIR experience. John talked about this last week because I know when we compared notes. This is the Athlete Imagined Revolution. We introduced this 2 years ago at Paris. We did this experience not because we were talking about, hey, here's Gen AI, here's something cool. We wanted to show a different approach to Gen AI than what was happening in the world. So for us, AIR is a prime example of how we want to use technology, break it down, and use it in a way to connect with athletes in ways that couldn't be possible. So for us, we worked with 13 different world-class athletes, and we used Gen AI to do 3 things. The first was connect with the athletes in a way we couldn't do before. Second was help us accelerate our ideation and augment our creativity. And third was help us be more efficient in different ways. And a great example of that is working with Sha'Carri. So she's one of the world's greatest runners. When we started working with her, we've been working with her for like 10 years now. And so we knew power, speed, force was all part of what she wanted to accomplish. What we actually did was we started world building with AI to better understand her and connect to her better as a human and as an athlete. So we started asking her about her childhood, about a fantasy world, like what is the perfect track you would run on? If you were to live in the future, what would it look like? We used Gen AI to help us world build these things. We would sketch and draw them ourselves, but it accelerated the connection, and it helped us get closer to her. Because when you're closer to the athlete or to a consumer, they're going to reveal things that you never would have known. So for us, she told us she actually wanted something a bit more graceful and closer to her body. And so we designed, in the end, this beautiful track spike. We never would have gotten here without using and embracing technology, but deconstructing it in a way that helped us first get closer to the consumer, help us ideate things we wouldn't have thought about. But ultimately, this final product didn't use Gen AI. We went back to drawing, 3D, computational design, her body scans, and everything to design this. But we leveraged Gen AI where we thought it was best useful to help us take an idea and a relationship somewhere where we never could have gone before. So again, we're in this new era. We call it unbound imagination because technology continues to accelerate and make things more accessible. There's always going to be limits to and constraints to your imagination. At each step of the way, every generation, when the pencil was first invented, when painting with oil paints were invented, when the computer, 2D, Adobe Illustrator, Maya, Houdini, Rhino, Grasshopper, all these things were invented, everybody had fear and trepidation. But when you go into it, deconstruct it, make it your own, that's when magic happens. But ultimately, you have to make sure humanity is always there. So to wrap up a bit, hopefully I repeated some words a bit so you kind of know the themes of this, is that in this approach, as you're thinking about your life, your careers, what you're going to do next, is really tapping into your imagination, cultivate it. Also, on top of that, think about your own experiences. What was the rebellious thing you did? What is that rebel spirit in you? Tap into that, because you need that when you ask the questions, what if? You need that to take a risk. You need that to bet on yourself and ultimately create whatever's going to come next for you. So for me, hopefully today, provide a little bit of inspiration and insight into who I am, into Nike, into where we believe the future is going to go, but also hopefully a little inspiration and confidence in you to lean into new technologies, not be afraid of it, not run away from it, but embrace it and make it your own. And ultimately, hopefully, you'll all become the next generation of rebels. And I'm going to close on a video here.
Innovation is in Nike's DNA to help athletes push their limits through disruptive products. Set Nike on a course that would forever change sport and culture.
how do you expect to look back and evaluate your legacy at some point?
I think we gave them the initiative to say, well, what if?
So my watch stop organized. I have no idea what time it is. Okay.
Still has time to stay. I know some of you have class now. We were going to do this as a fireside chat, but I think it's not time for that part. Q&A.
I'm too old for my own suit, but did everyone hear the question, or should I repeat? Okay, so so we work with thousands of athletes every year. We do work with our elite athletes, and partly why we do the contracts with them is to have access to them, to work with them, like LeBron or whoever else. But we work with thousands of everyday athletes. We actually have an innovation product testing program, so it's open to anybody. Somehow on the Nike website, you can actually find it and register yourself if you want to be part of it. So we do want to work with everybody. The idea isn't to limit it just to our elite athletes. We're trying to make products for everybody. So whether you've never done a run, we want to be able to encourage you to do your first run. And so to do that, we need to study everybody. And I think that's where the power of computation comes in, is that we can actually use in computational design, those who study it, you can use kind of the parametric design to tune our designs for people of different levels. And I think that's the beauty of what we've done, is that we create track spikes for Sha'Carri, but we can also tune that for the everyday high school runner who's not going to be running as fast as her. So for us, that's the beauty of what we've introduced into our business and industry using computational design. And so I myself, when I was younger, I would actually volunteer to be testing product. And I think that's the nice thing about Nike is employees can help test products, but we also open up to the whole community and world. So somewhere in the website that I don't work on anymore, there's a link to sign up to do that. And you get free products, so. You need shoes when you're sitting. Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. So in our sports research lab, we have our biomechanics, physiologists. We actually have a mind science team that study mind science, perception, and psychological aspects of our product. As designers, we're trained in kind of three key words. We talk about you have to look good, feel good, to play good. And I think that's important because any of you who play or when you watch sports, if you look at a product, if you don't feel like you look good, it's hard. Like, most kids will buy a special pair of shoes for their race day. They'll train in something else. Because when you have something like looks really special, you feel some magic to it. So that emotional connection is so important. And you also want to make sure you look at it, because if you walk onto the track or the field and everyone's like, ugh, but like, right now there's so many people watching the tunnel walk. Like when I was growing up, nobody watched the tunnel walk on the NBA or NFL or WNBA. Now it's like every time people walk into the stadium, people are staring at what they're wearing. So there's a whole human, psychological, emotional aspect to how you look. And so we take those all into consideration because those all factor into what people want to wear and how they'll perform at the end of the day. For which games? Oh, no. So Enhanced Games, for those who don't know, is a new event they're putting on to support enhanced performance drugs to perform. We're not part of that. That was the hardest part when we started computational design because prior to that, we designed in Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, or some other CAD tools. Computational design, when we started it, was the first time we actually had to figure out how we actually took data directly into our products. And so a lot of it's kind of trial and error to figure it out, but we work closely with the sports research lab. And a lot of it's a balance between your earlier question around the aesthetics and emotional side. So we have to balance that with the performance. I can't go into the actual details of it because that's our trade secret. And that's actually how we distinguish ourselves from our competitors. But you can imagine when you're doing architecture, you're doing these buildings and skyscrapers that are there's no way a human brain is going to comprehend all the details of what goes into that. Same thing in footwear. So when LeBron, the way he jumps, the amount of force he puts is so different than any of us. So we have to design a shoe for him that can support his weight, his force of pressure. And so what we'll do is something more parametric, where we'll codify basically, because most of you know with computational design, we're basically drawing with math and code at the end of the day. So we'll codify variables that take in data and allow us to tweak it for whether it's LeBron or for somebody like me or an everyday person. Great question. So I think we always want to stay on touch of what's trending in culture and stuff, but often we're just trying to design into the future. So whether it's 12 months in the future, 24 or 3 years, 24 months or 3 years in the future, so you can't necessarily predict that. What's more important though is that to be authentic, like culture, you can't force. You can't force your ideas into to make it a culture. So it has to be authentic. And so it goes back to who are you? What's your purpose? So I think that's the title of the second chapter was grounded in purpose. If you ground yourself in your purpose, it becomes authentic. And then those moments become authentic to the consumers, to your viewers and audience. And then hopefully they'll adopt it and want to bring it to life as well. Like when we created that first super shoe, we didn't think it was going to change the whole industry, but we believed in the athlete working with Elliot and others. This was something that benefited them. So we stayed authentic in our purpose. And through that, it started changing on its own. And that's what you can hope for is how you impact culture. Like with AJ1, we didn't go in designing something to change culture. It's just we designed what was going to be best for Michael Jordan. And then he took it to where he took it. And then everyone wanted to celebrate. So it became an authentic cultural moment. I think when you try to force something in culture, I've just never seen that quite work. Yeah. 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 So both John was here last week and I'm here because we love the students coming out of the school. Again, I'm hired too. And so for me, it's amazing school. You're learning amazing things from your professors. So thank your professors all the time. They're doing an amazing job. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here. And so, one, connect with professors, connect with career center. If you're interested in Nike, definitely want to talk about. There's so many opportunities that you can take from architecture to different practices. So at Nike, we do have an architectural practice. We do have stores. So the stores are designed by architects. And so we have a whole retail design division. I work closely with them. And so that's a whole department of architects. They do both exterior, interior, many other things that I don't necessarily understand. But that's a full organization that you can look for job opportunities in. Then you can look for opportunities in product design. So that's where we sit to some extent. So in design itself, you have apparel, you have footwear. I would say footwear is probably a little closer in what you study in architecture, but apparel definitely is an area of opportunity. Sarah works in apparel. And so for me, there are so many opportunities in product design that leverage architectural skill sets. What you're trained in, again, I go back to what I talked about in the beginning, because you're not just focused on more aesthetics, you're learning both art, science, form, function, you learn about nature, technology, all these things play into making an amazing designer. That's why I look to architects. So on my team, my design team, there's roughly like 30. I would say 20 of them are architects. And so I have poached from this school and this industry because I believe you bring something to the table a traditional designer doesn't. And I think in a team so there's product design that I talked about. The third area is innovation. That's where we sit. In innovation, our challenge is to create the future. And I believe architects have been the ones who have pushed the future. Computational design came from architecture. You know, Frank Gehry and many others who pioneered this. They made it their own. They're the ones who championed it. And that's why I come to architecture schools, is because that I'm inspired from what you do. When I walk around this afternoon, just like I've done before in the years, I'm always inspired to see what you all do, because your approach, your mindset, and what I want to kind of talk about, what I talked about today, is I like to see that rebel spirit. The people I tend to look for is the one who's going to do something a little different. And I often that comes from architecture. When I go to product design, industrial design, you're trained in a certain way. Architects are the ones who take technology and push it somewhere no one else has. And so you have something special here. You know, keep it up, tap into your professors, the connections you have here on your alumni network, because, you know, again, super happy with the students who I've met here, who I've hired. For me, just want to push on that rebel spirit a little bit here, though. Yep. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.